No, dude, you had that one bed fishing deal that we did where we're in those creeks and you put like 18, 19 in the boat. That's fun. During COVID, we started.
Good year. Good year.
We started
doing the lives. Yeah, he was telling me.
I think that was our second one. We thought we were going to get maybe like 20 people watch, and we started with on the west one, and all of a sudden. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Fisherman Daycare. I'm Daniel Sullivan from Bucks Island Marine and AdvancedAngler.com. Sir, come on in. Feel free. Okay, you're good. Hey, what we got?
Don't be shy. Come on.
Roundtable discussion here at the Alabama Fishing Show and Expo. We've got 4 of the best fishermen in the world on the planet. Legends. Every single one of them. Millions of dollars of earnings across the linear, just starting left to right. We've got Matt Herron right here from Asheville, Alabama. Over $2 million of career earnings in the Bassmaster and the FLW Tour. He is a 2007 FLW Tour champion. He is the 2016 TTBC champion. Matt's right here in Alabama. Right here, 20 minutes away from Asheville, Alabama. He's one of the best flippers in the business. Shallow water king. We've got Shaw Grigsby, a Bass Fishing Hall of Fame member. One of the founders of Major League Fishing. He has over $2.6 million in his career, 9 wins on tour levels. Again, Bassmaster or Bass Fishing Hall of Fame member. Paul Elias, the 1982 Bassmaster Classic champion. He is the reason we know about kneeling and reeling with a crankbait. He is also the reason we know about Alabama rays on a tour level. Again, $1.5 million in career earnings across his career. And then we got Scott Martin right here.
That's awesome.
Scott Martin's roommate. That's what he is from Alabama as well. Right down there is Woodinville, Alabama, but he is he's the 2019 Bassmaster Angler of the Year, $2 million in career earnings, 2 tour level wins. Scott Canterbury, folks.
And that's why you get the big bucks.
Scott Canterbury, folks, from right here in Woodinville, Alabama. He's one of the best shallow water fishermen, river fishermen in this business. Of course, when you win Bassmaster Angler of the Year, it proves that you're good at just about everything.
You got to get a copy of that.
So here's what we have. Yes, please do send it. Here's what we're going to do, folks. This is driven. I've already tasked. Thank you.
He's weighing in right now.
Yeah.
You'll see it.
He'll say something at the next tournament.
Oh, that was wonderful.
I can bite it just like the best of them. That's right. This is driven by you. This is a roundtable discussion. So, folks, what you want to know about fishing, you feel free to ask these guys. They're some of the most open anglers that you got. They are some of the best. Sight fishing master, crankbait master, flipping master, shallow water king. You guys find out what it is you want to find out about. Ask them. We're open for you. Who wants to go first? Or do I ask questions? Okay, go ahead.
Come on.
Let me translate for you guys online. He's grown up in Louisiana, he's a shallow water fisherman, now he's fishing in Northeast Tennessee. So he fishes a lot of deep water lakes. Anybody got any tips to how to learn how to fish deep water?
Well, the biggest thing is your shallow water opportunities are limited, very, very limited. Up there in that part of the world, I mean, most of those lakes are ultra clear lakes. You're gonna be doing a lot of drop shotting and Damiki style fishing, deep cranking and stuff like that. It's gonna be kind of sonar related fishing. So you're gonna have to get pretty good with your electronics, and it's gonna be, majority of your year is gonna be related to offshore stuff.
There's always some fish shallow, a few.
Yes.
You just don't get as many bites. You can have a lot more fun when you catch more fish, like he said.
Yeah, I agree the same thing. You know, and we learned that if you looked at the records of the Bassmaster Classic and you think of summertime, you know, David Fritz offshore cranking and all this kind of stuff, but there were always 2 or 3 guys that were always right there at the top. You know, with Guido Hibden, Denny Brower, Biffle, always in the top 5 in shallow water, even in the reservoir. So in any place you go, there's going to be shallow water fish. And if you want to learn the deep water fish, then you're going to have to get your, you know, your electronics and start working that way. But you'll have enough fish. You go back, and one of my favorite things was going as far back into a creek. You know, you have a reservoir, you go back into a creek, and then it would just basically dry up. And I actually, back in the old days, was, you know, I'd get out there and do my homework, and I would jump in the water and walk, because it'd be skinny, until I found the ditch. And you'd get an old ditch where you could get in, and I actually would figure it out. And I had a couple places where I could run, so I knew that if I turned right here and made it right here, I wouldn't hit this stump and that stump, and I could drop in. Once you get over the flat, it drops back into a creek channel. So it just shallows up right at where it hits the main lake, and then, or hits that creek, but then you got channels that run back in there. You might go 100 yards, you might go a half a mile of 8 to 10 foot water and stuff like that, and got great fishing back in there that people don't even go to because they think it ends right there. So there's opportunities to do things like that too. And so if you want to stay shallow, you can still stay shallow. But you know, a lot of where you're at, you got some great smallmouth fishing. You really want to get offshore and enjoy it.
Is that some of the reason why Tommy Biffle always wore those shorts? So his shorts wouldn't get wet when he was trying to feel for deeper water?
I'll add this, one of the best anglers on the planet, not Big Pope.
Yes.
He stays shallow, he lives up there in that area. He's got him on little tunnel holes. And there's lots of creek opportunities and river opportunities like that.
Right.
Maybe you can get you a little boat like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's going in water that deep.
The equipment that you use, yeah.
Yeah, you can get you a little flat bottom, you can access stuff up there in the rivers and stuff. That's his love, that's what he does. You just need to kind of get set up for it.
Post they won in that part of the country last year by running some real skinny water, getting up where there's current and catching smallmouth things. I don't know if you have largemouth, mostly smallmouth, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of shallow water fish in those Tennessee lakes. You just gotta work and find them. You know, some type of square bill or flat-sided crankbait is that's kind of where they originated. You know, I mean,
Right.
they fish a lot of shallow water. Like Shaw was saying, if you can get back in some of those creeks where it's silted in, you know, if you can get back behind that, I mean, all those laydowns and things like that, all that stuff's real. It's gonna always have fish in it.
Your opportunity to learn new techniques is there too, you know, with those waters and clear waters. They're talking about electronics and getting everything dialed in, forward-facing sonar, and seeing what's actually out there, knowing what fish are actually. We didn't know these fish were even out there years ago, but yeah, you got an opportunity to learn how to fish new waters other than your shallow water fishing that you're used to. Try to have fun with it.
A lot of the
Smaller baits.
Professional fishing right now, that part of the country where you're at is where all of it originated.
Oh, they've been doing it for years, for 2 decades.
Those guys up there have got ultra creative with what they're doing with the Mickey rigs and that kind of stuff. And those super clear lakes up there, and what's kind of amazing is it's transferring over even some of these shallow southern reservoirs. I mean, it's really, there's a lot of fishing pressure in the area where you're at. I mean, folks up there just eat up a bass fish. And it seems like every year something new and creative comes out of East Tennessee.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about what Matt just said, Dale Hollow Reservoir and that whole area right there, that's where the float and fly technique was developed, and that was a way to cope with suspended fish on bluff walls and things like that. So that's one of those things you might try to learn there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the water's cold.
Yeah.
Another question.
I got one on the, going to the forward face sonar. I've just kind of got into the game of that, about a couple months. What's the best advice you give about that one to kick it into the water?
Aaron's your expert on that. Look,
You'd have thought we set this up.
seriously, just the time. I mean, I'm the same way you are. I don't necessarily enjoy it. I've got my hands active target. I can see every fish out there, but I'm learning it as every day. It's a learning thing for me. And I thought that, like, the past couple of years, even with active target 1, I was catching. I go carry 2 people with me, catch my limit, catch 90 crappie every time I go. I thought it was so easy that I could just transfer that over to bass, and it's not that easy. You got to put your time in. You got to put your time in. Leave everything that you like fishing around the bank at home and just go fish. Go spend 8 hours out there each time you go, or 10 hours, or whatever, how long you can stand it.
True. That sums it up, really. And you can learn so much. I know there's a lot of controversy about how many you should have and all that kind of stuff, you know, but, you know, I'm sure just about every one of us sitting here would love to see it.
I thought it was a great tool.
Yeah, but it's, it teaches you so much about the way, what fish do, and I mean, I'd never dreamed that many fish just floated around out of, you know, out in open water and stuff. So it's, you know, and it kind of goes back to like what the Alabama rig did in the fall and winter. You know, it woke you up on how you could catch those fish, you know, but now you know, we just thought they did that in the fall. You know, we thought it was just those fish got suspended under bait in the fall, and that's why they were so hard to catch. But now we're finding out pre-spawn, that's where all the pre-spawn fish are, just floating around out there. They're not, most of them aren't on the bottom.
I thought it was a great tool, like to learn what your baits do. Right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
How your crankbait runs, how deep your crankbait runs on 15-pound line versus 10. There's a lot that I learned with it, and not thinking about bass fishing, but to see these fish. And I learned, even like Joey McNania from here, he's a guide on Logan Martin. Last year, he caught a fish out in the middle. It was, I think he said it was over 35 foot of water and it's 3 foot deep. And he caught it, reeled it in, and most of them are spitting up shad. This fish is out in the middle of the pocket, middle of the lake, and it's got crawfish pinchers sticking out its throat. When we catch that fish in the past, we were on the bank flipping a jig, and we caught him because he was up there feeding. Who knows, as soon as he fed, he may have went right back out in the middle, obviously what that one done. So it teaches you a lot about fishing and what they do.
Anybody got, y'all Bassmaster? So members of Bassmaster, so I was reading, and I believe it's in the Bassmaster magazine, it may be in Bass Times, but just a few days ago where they're doing this telemetry study on the bass, and it's blowing away a lot of what we thought the fish did, and that's where you're learning. So you're not only learning it from forward sonar, which is what we're picking up, But they did this for 2 years, and they found out, you know, we always said, man, in the fall when all those shad go back in the back of the creeks and there are tons of shad and the bass come in there with them. Well, some do, some don't. You know, and so we're learning. The first time I really got into forward sonar, I'm on a lake and you're going down doing your normal thing, and it's all got so much good structure like that. And you stand out here and you go, what the heck? You're out in the middle of nothing. One fish sitting there. He may be on the bottom. I had one sitting in a little dimple on the bottom. I said, what the heck, is that like a catfish? And I throw my thunder cricket out and I watch it go down, you know, bladed jig, and it gets down to the bottom, and then I pick it up and start it going, and you see it coming to him, and he gets to it, and it's like an 8-pounder. Just laying on the stinking bottom. And the same thing, you'll have one sitting there floating. It seems like big fish are very nomadic. They're individuals. They're not like, you know, like you think that, you know, you're going to get a whole school of 7-pounders, you know. But you find one here, one there, one here. So it's really neat. I think it's a great tool. And I told this story just a little bit ago. I think I told it to Dano that back, my dad died in '96, and I had just finished a tournament on whatever Russell, whatever that lake right there, and right above it is the lake right there in North Carolina, or sorry, South Carolina. What's the big one in South Carolina where they have the classic and all? Hartwell. So it's Hartwell. And I got paired with Swindle. Yeah, come on in, have a seat.
Guys, go in there.
So I got paired with Gerald Swindle. And I wasn't even thinking anything, because, you know, I was pretty messed up with my dad dying, and I just said, I'm riding with you. And he's a stud there anyway. And this was before Gerald was who Gerald is now. And he pulls out this ugly looking shaky head worm. So it's a straight tail worm on a waddy headed jig, and so it's like a waddy head, and then it turned, and I'm like, that ain't gonna catch nothing. Well, he whooped me like a yard dog. I said, well, I can compete with a Texas rig and it looks better, it's straight, you know. Oh no, I got pounded, right? And when I say pound, I got pounded. He's just like mashing them. Well, guess what I did? I went out, I got a whole bunch of shaky heads. I got now a whole shaky head box. I got every size, right? I got all the different, so I had to learn that. And that's the same thing that I feel with, you know, the Alabama rig. You know, it's something to learn. When chatterbait came out, bladed jig, it won every tournament out there. It would be first, second. In fact, that one in Okeechobee, I think it took all of the top 10, you know, and it was over and over. Sluggo, when those, I mean, I keep thinking of all the baits that came out and just dominated when that, and that's the same way I feel about forward sonar. It's something it's a great tool, it's there, and we're learning so much out of it, and you just have to go with it. And you know, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't give a rat if you have one transducer or 10 I don't care if you want to. I saw a guy picture the other day. Guy had 4 units lined up across his console. I don't even know how he gets in and out of his console, you know. And I'm like, you know, I got 2, and this is the first year of my lifetime where I put 2 up front. I never put, you know, they got like 3 and 4 units up front. I got 2, right? Finally, because I just put my one 16-inch Lowrance, and I like it. Well, then I put a 10 so I can have it just for forward sonar, 16, and then the 10 gives me mapping and the rest. But it's a tool that is fun, and it shows you fish, and you learn so much. You're learning that a lot of the fish will look at your bait and go, no, I don't want it. And then some of them get it, and you get things right, and you start picking them off, and it's just fun. Anything that helps you catch fish, that's the idea. I think we fish because we enjoy catching fish, we enjoy the pursuit. So I'm good with anything.
I enjoy it. I mean, I have done good with it in Weed Alley. I've done more success with it in Weed Alley than around here. But I got the hummingbird version, what I got. And I'm not sure if I got it exactly set right, because it don't seem like it's going out as far as, or it might just be the hummingbird is just not as good.
I think that's it.
You know.
I did
No comment.
Right.
We'll respectfully let one person not answer that question.
I will tell you this. This is something in my short dealings with it I have learned. Coosa River is extremely hard to use it for bass, because we have so many fish of all
Other fish,
kinds.
yeah.
You go to Wedowie, and Wedowie is not this big dynamic, it's not as fertile a fishery as the Coosa River is. So here you got so many bluegill and brim and gar and catfish, and everywhere you look there's something swimming. You go to Wedowie and you can kind of, you got timber and you got not as many fish, so it's a lot easier to understand what you're seeing.
The thing too, that the ones that are really good with it can distinguish, that they've done it so much now, they can distinguish.
I can throw
You
it.
know.
That's what I was telling them earlier. I can actually, which I've done a lot of crappie fishing with the last 3 or 4 years, but I can now, I mean, I'll still cast at them. If I see a fish, I'm gonna throw at it, but I can almost call my shot if it's a catfish or not. I can catch a catfish, it shows up different. You can see the tail separation a lot more than you can on bass, and the way it swims, you can actually see his tail swimming behind him with the active target too. Crappie show up, if they're way out there, they look more like a bass than any other thing that I've seen, except for when they're schooled up because they stack up vertically. If there's a big school, they'll stack up vertically and you can pick them off. But then bass are sometimes individual, and I've caught a lot of crappie being individual, but usually that'll be an individual one on a stick or a brush pile or something like that.
I think your best answer to your question is that's almost $10 million in career earnings on all these tours. What are they telling you?
Oh yeah. Nothing beats time on the water.
It's me not putting the time in on it yet to tell and keep throwing at a fish that you're not gonna catch.
No, you got to throw at it. We got guys that'll follow them 250 yards down the bank, one fish, and finally catch it by changing baits. I'm not that good. Now, I did catch some at Toledo Bend. I weighed in 22 the second day, all on active target too. And I did catch some of them by changing baits. But mainly it was the size of the jig head. I think it was rate of fall that would make them bite it more than anything. Just like a shallow fish, I think that jig fishing, I'm with Dirty Jigs and we got 70 different color jig skirts. I use about 6 or 8 most of the time. I try to keep it simple, and I think rate of fall affects a fish biting shallow more than a color does.
And if you got a, like I said, you got a guy that basically exposed the whole world to sight fishing right here.
Yeah.
And he had a time when he went, that's a cut, I gotta go. And I don't know what that time was for you, but just to bring that up, you know, at some point you see it, it ain't gonna bite, you go.
Yeah, you do the same with the fish, you know. And I was recalling this just the other day to a guy that I stayed on a fish, but this fish was biting me. You know, bass on bed is Seminole, biting me every cast. And you knew that within another few casts, it's not just going to bite it, blow it out, bite it, blow it out, blow it, that it was going to bite it and grab it and turn, suck it down and turn. And so I'm watching my clock and I'm like, it's biting it, biting it, biting it. I said, come on, you know, because I was in the lead of the tournament. And made a mistake. I stayed too long, you know, because I knew it was going to bite. I had to pull up and leave, and I ran back to the weigh-in, and I was a minute late. And it didn't cost me the win. I still won, but this is the bad deal. This is where I made the mistake. Cost my partner a plaque because he would have made a plaque that he didn't because he lost a pound. And that was probably a really disappointing time for me. So I didn't cut it. But anyway, you do learn real quick that some of you have to cut loose and just go, I'm not it. So
Matt, I want to give you a follow-up question for these, because most of these people fish around here. With what you just said about the Coosa River and the variety of fish that are here, and this not being a great forward-facing lake, what's your plan right now if you're going to go put the boat on the water on any Coosa River lake? I mean, how are you going to start targeting fish right now?
especially with this water that we
With the
got.
water right now, what's going to be the thing for them to catch more fish?
Well, the biggest thing you need to do is get in some of these bigger creek arms. It seems like that if you can find some clearer water, it's just like what we're seeing.
Now he's talking about without using technology. If you're around here, how are you going to fish tomorrow? Not how are you going to catch
How am I on fish? Oh
you
Lord,
go.
I'm gonna be in heaven.
Right. Yeah.
I'm on. You know, you got your natural migration of these fish. Right now, I was just on the Neely Monday. These fish are staged. They're ready to go. Surface temps about 58, 59. I did catch fish Monday with forward-facing sonar because I was out playing with it. I know. Look, man. Look. Despite what people think, I do not like getting beat with nothing. And I'm out there. I'm trying to learn, and the shad are pushed back. And what I really noticed with what was going on is there's a lot of fish that are out in the middle of these coves, and they're doing that little feed up deal. I mean, they're really in the bait hard. Some of them are transitioned up and starting to get on the clay and the gravel banks. Caught some there, but they're pushed back, and the next moon and the next warming trend we get, they're going to be in the traditional spawning places. And the whole.
When you say push back, you mean in the creeks?
They're in the spawning pockets. I don't like creeks. I don't. Anywhere you got current, anywhere you got a lot of water flow, I'm trying to get out of it. Trying to get away from those areas. You want to get something that's blocked and find areas that, typically this time of year in Alabama, I'm trying to get out of the north wind. That's as simple as it can be.
Absolutely. You
break it down, take your lake map, your Lake Master, whatever card you're using, or a paper map. And I simply I got a theory that I use when I go to a new lake or a lake I've been to multiple times. I break it down by season and what are they doing. And this time of year, I know we're going into a pre-spawn spawn deal. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down to what, areas that are blocked from northwest wind. And then I'm going to fish on the afternoon banks. And when I say that, I'm looking for the banks that are in the afternoon sun the longest, so that's going to be the warmest water.
Perfect.
And if you do that, you're going to find areas where these fish are at. And it's that simple.
Yeah, I do exactly the same thing in that pre-spawn and spawn deal. I always would go to body water and look for the first place they're going to spawn is always going to be something protected. So, I mean, sometimes it's a creek will go in and then it'll kind of neck down and open up and, and that's really protected. You don't have water flow, any type of basin, canals, marina basins, things like that can be sealed off, that can warm up quicker without the wind hammering it. And then the same thing, I mean, he's dead on everything right there.
Okay, so let's do it this way. What you're talking about, time of year, pre-spawn, spawn, you're going to target that kind of water. What are your two favorite techniques for that? Let's just go down the line.
Well, I'm typically going to have a bottom creature bait. I love a jig this time of year. I like a bulky profile, and I can control, like Scott was saying earlier, with weight, rate of fall, and with the colors we have now, if you think they're feeding crawfish, you can choose your colors to what you think they're feeding on. And then I want some type of bait, whether it's a thunder cricket or a chatterbait. It's a really, really good search bait, maybe a spinnerbait and a buzz bait. I'm going. Because at this point, I'm just trying to get them to show me where they are.
Shaw?
I'm almost, while he was sitting talking, I'm going, well, I'm thinking thunder cricket, swim jig. The cool thing about a swim jig, I use that Hack Attack heavy cover swim jig, but the cool thing about it is that it's not only a swim jig, right, that you can swim in and move, but it's also, you find like a bush or something, you pitch it and you can drop it in there and fish it. So now you've got both, which is exactly what he said, jig, thunder cricket, moving down the bank. Spinner baits are kind of forgotten because of the bladed jigs, and a spinner bait is a dynamite fish catcher. So.
Paul?
I'm gonna be the same way. My number one's gonna be a bladed jig.
Yeah.
You can cover so much ground with it, and they just bite it so good. And I would keep some type of stick bait, Senko type bait on, that I could just pitch around and it cover and weeds and whatever in front of stuff, But my number one deal would definitely be a bladed jig.
What about you, Scott?
Mine on the Coosa River right now would be probably number one bait. Maybe not after the rain we had yesterday, but my number one bait would be a topwater walking bait, spook or something, 100%. Then it would be a spinner bait or a chowder bait, depending on water color. If the water's a little bit cleaner, I go to the vibrating jig. If it's a little bit of stain, I throw a spinner bait still a lot. And then, I'd have my pitching baits, my creature baits on. But I don't think fish, just like Matt said, they're not spawning yet. I'd still be using a jig. But as soon as they start spawning, I get off the jig and go to a plastic, some sort of whatever your favorite creature bait is. But as soon as they start to spawn, I get off the jig a little bit around here. Seems like I won a tournament on the White River when they were spawning on a jig. They like it there, but around here they seem when they go to spawn, they just get off of it and you go to a creature bait and catch them. But a topwater and a swim bait too. Big swim baits, there's spots and largemouths will both show themselves. Anything up toward the surface. I love a buzz bait this time of year. So I'm throwing more topwaters than some of these guys, but still search baits.
So you're good with topwater pre-spawn?
100%. Anywhere these spots are 100. Like we'll go crush them. We'll go crush them tomorrow if you want to.
Spots on top
It's a different animal.
It is one of the most wonderful bites you can ever have in your life. I mean, you guys have spotted bass, we don't have them. You know, in Florida, we got largemouth, we got big largemouth, so it's fun.
Yeah.
But that spot bite, and I've always really got into it heavy, is right after the spawn, and that's just amazing. Some of the topwater strikes you have all in that April, May, and beginning of June is just insane.
They will crush it pre-spawn. And when they're spawning, spots are so aggressive, they'll come up and hit it. A lot of times you don't catch them, but they'll show themselves and you can throw a shaky head right back in there and catch every one of them just about. But a lot of them will get caught. It's just like smallmouth. We go to Champlain or somewhere in June, you're going to throw that big walking bait, and a fish will come out of 12 foot of water, or 15 foot of water, and hit it. And you'll get over there where he was, and there'll be a bed down there 15 or 16 foot deep that you can see if the wind's not blowing. So it's the same thing with a spot. They're just aggressive enough to hit it.
Since topwater is the topic right now, give me water temperatures. Where do you start topwater? Going across, Matt, start with you again.
I'm gonna talk about the Coast River, because that's where we are.
Perfect.
And typically, just like right now, we had a big warm rain. Water temperature is rising. And a lot of these big females will go back in these spawning areas, and they float up high in the water column. They're getting up in the sun or whatever, and a buzz bait in particular is absolutely a magnet for big fish. It's not a big numbers bait, but they floating up in there, it's really, really good search bait and allow you to cover water and catch some really big fish. And my number's normally around 56 to 59 is the water temperature I'm looking for. Seems like when it rotates up after 59, they kind of start sinking down, getting more closer to the spawn deal, but that 56 to 59, they're up high and they will show themselves on a buzz.
I'm about the same. I said getting that mid to upper 50s and the top water bite really starts going, and then I'll use it throughout, you know, especially like after the spawn. Some big females will get it during the spawn, so that's, you know, in Florida, that's one of the big things is a prop top water.
Oh, yeah.
During the spawn, man, you twitch and it's sitting there and you're letting it sit, and all of a sudden it's a 10-pounder, you know. So, but same thing here, that during the spawn and then post-spawn, all these males are protected fry, right? And you throw a topwater bite and they eat. So really that topwater bite starts, just like you said, in that mid to upper 50s, and then goes all the way through to post-spawn, all the way into May and into June. And it's a special time, man. It's a special time.
I'll tell you something about a buzzbait. A whole story.
All right.
Buzzbait Masters.
1979, I won my first BASS tournament.
Were y'all alive then?
Yeah.
I was alive. I'm not.
I was alive.
You just checking?
I got to hear this.
I was only 5 years old.
I hear you. I was on the 3.
I learned at home fishing in Mississippi. We had a few, you know, there were smaller lakes, but they had like lily pad stems in them and stuff from the winter, you know, where the lily pads had died down. And I just broke out a buzzbait in 52-degree water and started just, not a lot of bites, but when you got a bite,
It was a big one.
It was always a big one. Well, we were on Lake Gadsden, and it was like the first part of April, and the water was still cold. Water temperature was down in the low 50s, and I practiced one day, you know, and I didn't do very good at all. I'd heard about the speed shed and all this kind of stuff, and I'd tried everything I knew to try. Of course, I didn't know a lot about, I didn't even know what a jerkbait was, you know. That's how much I knew about bass fishing. And that second day, I just said, it kind of clouded up, and I said, heck, I ain't catching anything anyway, I'm gonna try a buzzbait. So I went down by the dam and went in a creek. I hadn't been down there at all, and started throwing a buzzbait, and all of a sudden it was just stupid, you know. And it started raining, and I came in. I went in the house, and in the cabin we were staying in, and my wife was with me and a kid, and I thought about it, and I said, you know, I only got one of these buzzbaits this color, and that's back when they had the rubber.
Yeah.
You know, the regular rubber skirts on them and everything, and they'd get all messed up. And I took and I put electrical tape around the hook of that buzzbait. And I went out the next morning and I started throwing that buzzbait, and I got like 15 blow-ups in this same creek, because I'd only spent about 45 minutes in there because of that thunderstorm coming up. So I'm chomping at the bit for the tournament to start. You know, I was just going crazy. Well, we had a warm rain, and it actually rained all day the first day of the tournament, just about. And I threw that buzzbait all day long. I drew Greg South, Dr. Greg South, in that tournament. And he went with me. He knew the lake, but he went with me because I told him, I said, man, we might have a 40-pound bag or something, you know. Well, I got 2 bites and he got 3 bites. They were all big ones, but there wasn't much to it. But the next day, I caught 20-something pounds, and the next day I caught like 27 or 28 pounds and won the tournament. And the water temperature never got above 55 degrees. So, you know, it'll surprise you what a buzzbait or a topwater bait will do in colder water. You're not going to get a lot of bites, but they're going to be the right bites when you get them.
That's right. We had a guy from here, Reed McMemory, used to throw a topwater year round. I mean,
Yeah.
all the time.
But not to interrupt you, but real quick, in the fall, I fished one at Grand Lake, Oklahoma, freezing cold, and I finished second. I got beat by a guy throwing a buzzbait. It was like a November freezing
I remember
gym.
that tournament.
The water was probably still a little bit.
It was just
cold
cooled
water,
down, yeah, and it was crazy, man. But I got beat on a buzz.
In the spring, like I'm exactly with these guys, but I'm more on his. At 52 degrees, I'll start throwing a buzzbait as long as the temperature is going up. If you had a cold front and the temperature is dropping, I won't throw it. It seems to affect them a lot more. But if the temperature is going up or stable at 52, I'll definitely throw a buzzbait. And pretty much any topwater bait, but buzzbait for sure. I mean, that seems to just, I don't know if it just makes them mad. They want to hit it and kill it sometimes, but especially these spots around here, I'll hit it at 52. I've caught them in the snow a couple times in spring, February, when it's snowing, I've had them crush a buzzbait.
I know that 2 weeks ago at the Coosa River Team Trail in Logan Martin, guys were getting frog bites. So, all right, who's got another question?
Question? Yes, sir.
So, I was still trying to figure out fishing out here. I grew up in Texas on Lake Fork and, lakes like that, and it was always Texas rig or topwater. And so, just on what you guys were talking about, back there, I always looked for shadows and stuff like that when I was doing topwater. I was always looking for those kind of areas. Sun's coming down, get that shadow area, and I could hit topwater all day long.
Yep.
It's the same kind of thing out here. I have not done well.
It is for largemouth.
I live up on the Tennessee River, and I have not figured it out yet.
It is for largemouth, and I think that shadows and things is more prevalent with largemouth on top water than spots. They'll seem to hit it out in open water, just a big long point, may have some rock or a stump out on it or anything. Where they're setting to spawn or whatever, they'll come up and hit it in open water. But for largemouths, I think it's better to be around some sort of structure, and I think that's just because largemouths live around structure more.
You had a question.
Mr. Tim?
Tim Hurd.
It has to do with my worst fishing technique, and that is fishing a jig. I used to make 2 casts with it, I hang up and break off. When do you start throwing a jig around Leland and Weiss?
When Nick Saban says so.
Saying much anymore.
He likes that, though.
I always got a jig on front deck of my boat. If I'm on this Coosa River, there is a jig on front deck of my boat. There'll be creature baits and there'll be soft plastics, but there's always a jig on front of my boat. It's just always, it's just a big bite getter. And and the best time to me to throw is when everybody else is throwing plastic.
I can give you a little bit of a tip here, and you probably know this anyway, but the heavier your jig, the more you'll hang it up, right? So if you can get away with a lighter jig, the less you hang it up. It tends not to grip the wood and the this and that, so you can get it through and finesse it through. The other thing, I remember when I first started fishing a jig, and this was way back in the 70s, and I'm on Kentucky Lake, and you pitch it into a bush, and now all of a sudden you pick it up and you hammer it into it, and then you end up breaking it off. and I had to really learn how to finesse it through, you know, the bushes and stuff. And so you know, you had to learn what a fish felt like, because, you know, you didn't want to set the hook into the tree. But then you get it in there and kind of shake it. And anytime you vibrate a bait, so if it's on a limb and you can vibrate it, and then it breaks up the tension of it on that, and it comes through things easier. So you pull it up and then just shake it a little and it'll come on. Just increase your tension, and so you can get it through things without breaking off. So a little bit lighter jig head will help you get through stuff and not ripping it into it, you know, and then breaking it off in time. Of course, now the jig manufacturers love for you to break it off.
What's the main reason you're laying it down?
Well, because I get frustrated, you know, I go out and I say, I'm gonna flip a jig. And I make 2 casts, and you know, shake it a little bit, move it, hang the sun on the needle, and have to break it off. I mean, and that's frustrating, because I'm really a moving blade crankbait guy. That's my #1 technique. But I want to really, you know, get the fish jig. I have 3 oxygen jigs. I mean, 3 times oxygen jig, but I don't care. No matter every time, 2 casts, and I hang up and break off.
Okay, so I know they love that too, but for this river, both of these guys over here on the ends have made jigs specifically for the way they fish. Matt and Scott made dirty jigs for it. Let me ask you what kind of jig you're putting in there first.
I got dirty,
It's not going to shake.
flipping shot hamburger jig.
Yeah. Present.
So pick like you got rock and brush. I mean, why is your jig what it is?
If I use mats a lot too. I mean, if it's rock, I use mats most of the time. Rocks or stumps, I use mats a lot. If it's brush or current involved, I use mine. And it just seems to come through structure a lot better. You gotta be able to, you gotta learn to feel that bait. You gotta know what it's coming up on. There's times I've won big fishing tournaments. I've won big fishing tournaments and won tournaments by setting a hook on a fish that I didn't actually know, 100% know it was a fish. But if you feel something that's off, spongy feeling or something, I mean, it's not bad to set the hook sometimes. If you feel him blow it out, you've messed up, you've already messed up. So, I mean, if you feel something off, it's for sure set the hook, or if your line is moving or something, but it's just, you got to spend some time with your hand. Tie another one on when you break it off. They sell them down at Bucks. You got plenty. I know you got plenty of them. Go get it. Don't break it off. Go get it. Shake it loose. It's all about presentation. If I'm using a vertical presentation straight up and down, like I said, if I'm flipping the rock bank or even a pier pole or something and there's no grass or anything involved, I use Matt's head because it displaces a little more water than mine does. I like the way his hook is in his. But if there's current and my bait's got to come through brush or grass, I use mine.
Let me translate what you just said. Pier pole, that means dock post.
Yeah.
Well, one thing you really want to take out of what he just said is you have to feel what that is, right? So every single bait, and this is really important in fishing,
Crankbait.
every single bait you have has this feel, right? When you throw it out really back, that's what it is. Whether it's a crankbait, whether it's a thunder cricket, chatterbait, you know, ocho that you got and it's sinking down, this is what it feels like. When that changes, something's going on, right? So as your sensitivity, and there's a couple things you can do to increase sensitivity, and I don't know how each one of these, I'd love to hear how each guy here holds their rods and reels, but Gary Klein holds his rod in front of the reel. So he's got the rod in his hand, line in his fingers, okay? Yeah, mine, I cradle the reel because that's the biggest part with the line in my hand.
That's the way I do.
Right?
I cradle the reel, this finger's on the line.
Yeah, you've
Mine's
got,
up under the.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you see that we're line contact, which means now we're feeling everything.
That's why I
What you'll
can't feel a
have-
jig bite.
Come on, man.
So you're reeling a thunder cricket and you're reeling it, or a crankbait, and all of a sudden you're feeling it gets a little tighter. Well, what's happening? You're coming up on a limb, so it's digging a little harder and you're feeling it getting tighter, and then it's going to hit the limb. So you'll get that feel, okay? And as the more that you fish, the more you concentrate on the feel, then you end up feeling these things. Like the other day, I'm fishing I think it was just a drop shot, and I threw it out there, and I'm fishing, and all of a sudden it just went, where'd my drop shot go?
Better set the hook.
Yeah, you better set the hook. He's got it, and he just lifted it off, and there's nothing there. And same thing with the shaky head. You throw your shaky head out there, and this is what it feels like, and all of a sudden it's gone. You may not have felt the bite, but it's like, well, he's got it and it's swimming to you or whatever. So learning, and every bait has that feel, every bait. So you need to know what that feel is on your bait, and that bait, whether it's a jig, shaky head, spinner bait, and when it changes, there's something there. Now it could be a limb, it could be a fish, and you'll get better as you start feeling it. But I see a lot of guys that would hold their rod behind the reel, and that's a real tough deal, because now you've got all the weight of the reel and the rod and more of it in front of you, and you got to grip it tighter, and that's something that's going to reduce your sensitivity.
Matt, are more jigs hung on the initial presentation when you lose contact with it?
I think most jigs get hung up because of the actual retrieve. I see a lot of guys that pull a jig sideways, and if you pitch a jig into cover and you pull it sideways, you're just gonna drag it into it. The weed guard can't do its job. A jig is literally, even though you're scooting it on the bottom, you want to do it with more of a lift, because then you're keeping the weed guard up, and you're letting the head come over stuff. But if you ever drop your rod down sideways, like you do a worm or something, and you go to drag it, it's almost like it'll flip that jig over on its side and drag it into the brush.
Yeah, like if you get,
The rod, I always keep mine like at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it's, I got two things about it. Number one, I never let the rod tip get over my eyes. If I can't see the rod tip below my hat, trouble's coming.
9:30 to 11.
Sir, because when he gets up here, if you get a strike or something bad happens, he throws a bunch of slack on you, you just lost this fish. Because you can't take up enough line. You're just out of position. But lift it. Even though if you want to drag it, do it dragging it this way, with the reel and the rod at the same time, but keep the jig upright. If you drop it down sideways, trouble's coming. You're just gonna get humped.
I don't fish a jig like a worm. I mean, I'm probably like Matt. My presentation on a jig, I would say 70 to 80% of the bites are coming on the initial fall or the first time I move it. If I work a jig 3 foot, I'm gonna reel it in and make another pitch. I'm not gonna work it back. And now football jig or something out on structure, Paul will teach you a lot about that, I'm sure. But like flipping a jig, I'm gonna work it 2 or 3 foot now, because I'm gonna try to put it in the strike zone when I pitch it. And I'm gonna work it 2 or 3 foot, and I'm gonna reel it in and make another pitch. I'm not gonna work it all the way back. That could be a lot of getting hung too. And I don't set the hook very hard either. Tim, I don't set the hook very hard either, do I? You've seen it in that pocket. Yeah, he knows. He fished with me.
As someone who spent 30 years covering these guys on the water, there's 2 things that I take away from what they just said. And being completely aware all the time of what your lure is doing, knowing the bait and how it feels, and mechanics. If I walk away from the water after watching these guys on the water, I've shot every single one of these guys on the water with my long lens. I've watched every mechanic that they've ever made. If they're out of position by this much, it's rare. When that bait hits the water, they are ready to go. And if they get bit, it's instant. I've watched Matt, I've watched Shaw, I've watched Paul, I've watched Scott. It is instant. They are ready to go at all times, and they know what it is. The other thing that makes a difference from some of these guys, I can't take credit for this one, but it was a gentleman by the name of Rich Topper. Fished the tour for quite a few years, won a U.S. Open in the 80s. And somebody asked him at a seminar, what's the difference between a professional fisherman and an amateur fisherman? And he said about 100 cents a day. If these guys feel like they were bit, they set the hook. Lures are cheap, guys, except for some mass sundays.
Don't set the hook on the glass.
They feel like they might be, they set the hook, and that's where you start learning. Yes, sir.
Well, I can tell you, I'm in my mid-70s, I've been fishing the Coosa River, I've been on Lake Lake for 20 years. And I feel for him, because if I have an Achilles heel, and I'm like Gerald Swindle, I'm a jump fisher, I'll fish the river, takes it to get a bite. But
same.
So I used to play with it. You know, when you're a kid, you just play with it, right? So I get a bite, whether it's a plastic worm or jig, get a bite, and I've done this on a jig quite a few times. You get a bite, and then you just go, what's he gonna do, right? And and he swims. I actually had one swim to the boat in like 3 foot of water. I turned the trolling motor around and blasted him. He stopped, kept going. And so the only time they really are gonna spit this thing out is if they feel you. If they feel you, like if you pull into them and then they go, and this is funny because I have guys, you know, when professionals, we get a bite, we don't want to catch them. We got guys over here, you don't catch them, so we're shaking them off. Well, the easiest way to get them shake off, put tension on them, they'll go poof, and blow it out. You know, if you like give them line, well, heck, they just end up swallowing it, getting it, and then you got them no matter what. There's nothing you do. But you put tension like that, just put tension, and he'll blow it out, and then you keep on going. And a lot of times he'll get it as you're trying to get it away from him. Yeah. But anyway, yeah.
I'm kind of like, I don't pick up a jig because I'm all down the lake. I know there's the stumps and the rock. We got a different kind of rock down that lake into the lake. And usually I throw a jig, I'm like, well, I'm pretty convinced. I guess I'm being a pessimist. I know I'm fixing to hang up.
So to me, anybody that tells me their favorite bait is a climb, and then the next one tells me they can't catch one on jig,
Yeah.
it's in their head.
Yeah.
Because it's the same deal.
It's in your head.
You got to put everything up and throw that and just say, I'm throwing it today, and I don't care if I don't catch one, but I'm throwing it today. You know?
Like that big and your jig fish has a potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you got it. And it's that way with a lot of baits. I mean, I'm known for deep cranking, and I have people come up to me all the time. Man, I don't know how you do that. If I'm not catching anything, I get wore out. I hang up all the time with those $10 crankbaits, and it's all the same thing. Understanding what that bait's doing and how you're presenting it, and you're not going to learn that. We can sit here and tell you for 2 hours how we do it, but until you put that thing in your hand and make yourself use it, you're not going to understand it, and you're not going to learn it. Yeah. So spending time with that bait in the water is the only way you're going to be able to do it. And yeah, I mean, when you're going to break them off, you're going to have to go over there and stick your rod tip down in the rocks and in the wood and get it loose, but until you put some hours in on it, you're going to keep laying it down. You're not going to ever learn to use it.
Jay Ellis won a classic at Lay Lake on a jig, up in the river. Jay Ellis won a Bass Classic pitching a jig below the Logan Martin Dam, right? Okay, but it was hurt. How many jigs do you think he lost when he was setting the hook thinking it was?
I know how many but I said KBD lost when he won the last classic up at the beach. Like, he just kept breaking off and getting the new.
Because they didn't want to go in on the water.
Yeah, but I think he was throwing lipless, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's throwing up there. He just didn't want to spook the school.
Yeah.
Well,
But the point is, you're going to lose tackle. You got a chance at a bigger bite with the jig than anything else. So.
Yeah. I'll make a quick comment here. I've sat through a lot of round tables, and we ain't round at all, but we might be, but not on the table. Anyway, but I'm gonna say I am impressed that this is one of the best ones I've seen for just quality. What Paul said is extremely important. I remember when I made the Redman All-American at Havasu in 1985, everything I heard about Havasu, topwater, throwing Zara spooks, back then, walk the dog topwater. I had no idea how to fish one, right? And the only way to learn was doing exactly what Paul just said. I actually took all the rods out of my boat and carried one rod, a Zara spook, went to my home lake, Orange Lake, and started throwing it. And you'd like work it, it'd go straight, and then it'd go over here, and then it'd go, and until you got to where you could learn to walk it. And it wasn't about catching fish, it was about doing that. And then all of a sudden I'm getting bites, and I'm going, dude, they eat this in Florida. And I'm like, that can't, and so, but then you learn the bait. So a lot of times if you want to learn a bait or a technique and all, just take that and force yourself. Say, it's not about catching fish, it's about learning today. I'm gonna use this technique with drop shot, shaky head, whatever it is, and learn it. Put the rest of the stuff up and learn that, see what it does, get the feel of it.
You gotta build confidence in that bait, you know, that's the most important thing. If you don't have any confidence in what you're doing,
Yeah.
you're probably not gonna get bit. You know, the thing I hate to do most, and these guys will laugh at me because it's one of the best ways there is to catch fish on almost every lake. I hate docks. I hate fishing around a stinking dock. I'll do anything I can do to stay away from a dock.
And he made a top 10 in the Bass Elite on docks, and he hates every
but
minute. He's like every cast, he skips it, it hits here, and it wraps up in the pole, and he breaks it on. He hates it.
You won't believe it. Like a line I hang up on my finger, and I'll go to skip it, and I've got more broken off. I got more broken off wacky rigs on Cayuga Lake than anybody in the world. I got people come out on their dock, and they're like, how in the world did that
Like a Christmas tree.
How did that get up there?
All Elias has been here.
You know,
My dock looks like a Christmas tree.
But the only way I was able to learn to do it was I just said, by God, I got to go out all day long, forever, how long it takes, and start fishing docks. You know, and it's a nightmare to me. I hate it. But if you're going to compete in tournaments on a lot of lakes, you gotta fish them. You know, so and that's the only way I could do it was.
And there's no fudging in that story. That's 100% true.
To this day, I'm still terrible. I mean, I'm lucky I hadn't choked myself to death with one. Get it wrapped around my neck because I'm the world's worst. Thankfully, they have never put a camera on me except one time, and that was on Cayuga Lake when I made a cut skipping under docks. But it's the worst thing you could ever watch. But you got to be able to do it. And the only way you're going to learn to do any of that stuff is spend time with it and build confidence in it.
Matt, you were going to say something.
You know, I was gonna tell you, I cut my eye teeth on Goose River. This is my home lake, but where I fell in love with flipping and fishing and digging is like, there was a point in time at Lake I don't, what, 10, 15 years ago? And I did it with the jig. But the way I finally, we used to, back in the day, Denny Breyer, of course, that's to this day, he's my man. And
Yeah.
I watched him and my jig. If you went to Bucks right now and you bought my jig is a modernized, souped up version of the jig that Denny set the world on fire with. It was a 5/8 outrun. And it's basically the still same head, shape, everything. It's just got a new and improved hook, weed guard. But we used to go down there in the summertime in the grass and we flip worms, right? But what? All over it, Paint Creek. But the deal was, one day I went down there and I got tired of catching 2 and 3 pounders, and I'd watch Denny, and he was flipping the 5/8 hour. So I got me some number 11 pork chunks, and I went down there and blazing heat. And that's all we had was 2 flip sticks. But we flipped grass, and all of a sudden, I started catching 5 pounders in July and August out of that grass with that jig.
I learned how to jig fish, whipping on Winter Haven chain.
Right.
And the Mississippi River down in Florida where my brother from. That's where I really got into it. But now going what Paul said, I've got a son who's in the industry. He works for Michael Neal, MLF Pro Michael
Right.
Neal, Aiken, Tennessee. My little son, he's been in the industry for a while. That kid started out, I took him to visit, he was like skipping a jig. That kid, he had been fishing here longer than I had. He can take that spinning rod, take that jig, and all the way to the bank. I'm sitting there going, thank you. And I just can't do it yet. I'm 70-some years old.
Well, we lose muscle, everything at that, but I'm impressed with the young guys do that right now with the bait catch.
Oh yeah.
They take a jig, they take a,
I'm better
in
at
fact,
bait catching.
Ed was fishing a lead in Texas at one of those deals, whatever the lake is, Dallas, it was right out of Dallas or whatever. And I'm fishing this Merino, and Edwin's fishing the next slips over, and I'm catching more spinnerbait, and I come by, those houseboats are, I don't know, they're huge.
These are 40, 50 foot.
50 foot.
Them double deckers.
Big houseboats, yeah. And I look back there, and at the very back of this houseboat all the way back, about this high out of the water, is a bladed jig hung up there that Edwin's been throwing. And he got it all the way, little itty bitty slip, way on back there. And I mean, this is like 60, 70, maybe 80 feet back there. And I'm like, how the heck did he do that? You know, but that's these kids now, they'll do it backhanded, left-handed, just, and it'll skip in a spot that isn't 6 inches wide all the way down the deal, straight down to the back. That's how we just had our West Point tournament one. This kid standing up there just throwing in boat slips, and he's so accurate, and it's impressive to watch that with dock fishing. You know, I used to be okay, and I couldn't compete with what they do now.
Okay, we got time for one more good question. Who wants to ask? There you go.
This is my first year on that stuff and doing photos and stuff. And I've done I guess my favorite thing to do now. I'm an engineer by trade, so I like to experiment. Just to follow up on that buzzbait deal. I caught one on the Gunner's Pool a couple weeks ago when the temperature was 49 degrees. So what is y'all's like favorite experimental techniques that's actually been successful? And we all know we've done stuff and yeah, it's going perfectly terrible. So just to give an example, I was free fishing the BFL tournament a couple weeks ago and done a drop shot because I noticed the shad was staying stationary. And of course, I know everybody's heard about the shaking bait technique now that everybody's supposedly went there with. But I was not having very little success using that because the fishing really does live in the grass. So, but I did find some about 20 to 23 foot and took a drop shot with a Nico hook and was fishing a Ned rig. Because I noticed the shad was small, you can tell it was small, it wasn't like either shad or anything like that. But that Nico hook with that Ned rig and the fancy shad cover and started catching those fish. It was just an experimental something I came up with. What's y'all's favorite experimental technique?
So he's asking what, for folks back on the internet, he's asking what's your favorite experimental technique, and he had a drop shot modification that he did. And he's asking him what's an experimental technique, I guess, that you maybe picked up and had success with. Is that what you're kind of getting at? Okay.
Biggest thing I've learned is I always keep them on the hook more than Nico. I mean, it's a fish catcher. A nail weighted worm, whether it's a Stanko, whether it's a trick worm, whether it's a mess worm, it's just, it's a weapon. I mean, there's a lot of times when those fish are just hard, they don't want to bite, that they'll bite it. And it's just something that I've always got on the deck and I always play with. I learn something new about it every time I use it.
Yeah, and I agree. That's a really, really good rig, the Nico. You know, the Ned is kind of cool. It's just a nub. It's just a tiny little deal, but you know, all the Ned heads just make it stand up, and you know, it's just kind of like a modification on a shaky head, except it's not, you know, it's not rigged that way. So, but those are tremendous ways to catch fish, especially in heavily fished or when you're fishing behind guys. And nowadays, you know, we have a lot of anglers, and so you're usually going to be fishing behind people. So those are real good.
Paul?
You know, it seems like it's always an experiment to me, I'll tell you, I found myself using a power shot rig more than I ever have. And it just seems like you can present a bait, like even in Florida in the reeds and that type of stuff, you know, taking a heavier drop shot or even a lighter drop shot with a bigger bait and pitching it around and still being able to use a bait caster. You know, I told you how much I hate spinning rods, but that to me is something I've been experimenting with a lot. Feeling like I'm getting a lot more bites than I would just like a Texas rig or anything, but fishing it around the same stuff that you fish a Texas rig around.
Most of that, I mean, everything they said, the wacky worm, the Nico, all that stuff stays tied on all the time. When I'm experimenting now, it seems that I'm using I try to do like the big bait game, the big swim baits, try to get that going. And it's so situational that it rarely pays off in tournaments. I mean, like, it's a great tool, search tool. The big glide baits, the big swim baits, it's great for practice because you have a ton of followers. I remember at Hartwell, I fished a tournament at Hartwell, maybe an FLW at Hartwell, and I had like 50 docks that I threw a big glide beside that I had multiple fish over 3 pounds follow my bait to me. I never threw it during a tournament. I'd pull up to those exact docks and throw a wacky worm under there and catch half of them. So the bigger bait, the big glides and the swim baits has been something that I've been experimenting with. I mean, I still haven't cashed in on a tournament with it. Hopefully I will one day, but it is my experimental baits.
So, and to wrap it up, guys, you want one of the best glide baits out there right now, tournament size, go see Matt at Tattle Design booth. His son has built the best tournament glide bait out there. Go spend on it, but it's the best one I've ever seen, and I've seen them all since Jerry Rago came out with them out in California where I used to live. Guys, thank you so much. A lot of the tackle that they talked about, we have them at Bucks Island in booth 39.
Remember
Feel free to
Jenny
stop
at
by.
Rayburn
We got discounts
and
over there.
educating.
But thanks for coming and
I
spending
didn't
time with us.
educate him. I
Thank you
ended
for you
up,
guys.
you know,
And thanks
He had a really good day.
he
He was flipping that.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We got a few more seminars going on later in the day. Love to have you join back up with us. Again, I would highly recommend you get down here to the venue here till 7 today, and then be open again tomorrow at 10 and go until 5. So get on down here.